My name's Clare Jennings, and I'm a medical science liaison, and I also was a technologist for many years as well, so that's how I got to where I am today. Medical science liaison works with a lot of the research investigators, predominantly in the academic institutions. And when you work with the research investigators, what you actually do are working on products for the future, or working on current products where they feel that maybe they could possibly get an additional indication or additional something for a disease state. I predominantly work in the radiotherapy part of the business, and what that actually means is I work on therapies for different types of diseases. I've worked in the hematology sector, I've worked in the prostate cancer sector, and now I'm in the neuroendocrine tumor sector in order to go ahead and see what we can do to bring other products to the market. Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, when I was a technologist, you always knew what your days were, but even if you had call, it was great. Didn't mind, obviously, because you're there for patient care to begin with. And I think the thing that was really good for me is I took the next step to go into clinical research. So I actually went and got a certification as a clinical research associate. So with that being said, the reason I bring all that in, because all the parts come together. And that's basically why I'm saying that's because I was in the clinical research side. Now what happens is I'm actually working with the clinical investigators. So it depends upon what projects are due. You're on big time timelines, obviously, when you work for industry, because they have timelines that they need to meet. So you're constantly working with your clinical investigators, making sure that they have everything that they need for their research studies to continue to rock and roll, because they also have to go through different internal committees as well. So I may have to start getting information for them to be able to bring the products to internal review boards or to the radiation safety committees, those types of things. Also, too, I work very closely with the clinical investigators as well, for them, not just for me to work on a clinical research project, but I also use them as a liaison to also teach and educate me of what they're looking for as they move forward in a lot of these projects. So I think for me, the most interesting part is because I never gave up my nuclear medicine background, so I've always gotten to use that. And then I got to take my clinical research stuff and go ahead and do that. And now I get to work with some of the biggest thought leaders in the nuclear medicine industry. And it's so funny because I used to be as well, I was able to go into general pharma for a little bit on the medical science liaison as well. And I don't know what it is, I think the nuclear medicine community is more embracing. I don't mean that against any other physicians in other different fields, but I think it's just because they have so much science that they like to be able to see what they can do with it for more effective, sensitivity and specificity in scans and things like that, and what's the best way to sequence a therapy and those types of things. So to me, that's the most interesting part. And again, I think it's because it's a real educational collaboration between both, between the scientist and between industry at the same time. I think the most challenging part is when there are concepts that an investigator is totally interested in going through and wants to get this project done. I think some of the challenging pieces are obviously budgets, what the company's expectations are, is that where they really want these drugs to go, like what their strategic plan is, and then also trying to align them up with the clinical investigators at the same time. The challenges, I think the good part about some of the challenges as well is the fact that you kind of have to work it out yourself in a lot of ways. So you're very independent and you're very entrepreneurial. So I think sometimes you just want to make sure you're making the right decisions and the right paths you're going down. Absolutely. For instance, I just entered the space of neuroendocrine tumors and just spent the whole afternoon at the sessions for theranostics, and it was great because again, the physicians in nuclear medicine are so approachable, and you can have dialogue, and they're just as excited about the new novel therapies, as the people in the audience are. So the networking here is just amazing, and I think that's how I've been very successful as well, has been through the society, because when you do go to these meetings and you find out other companies are doing other things, and you're like, wow, that's kind of interesting, maybe I'll pursue that, or maybe I'll investigate that a little bit further. And I think the thing about it as well, working with a lot of the physicians through the society, I've been able to call them up and say, okay, I'm looking at this opportunity, what are your thoughts? And they'll be like, okay. So it's good. It's really been good. It's been a good collaboration, I say. And I've been a member, okay, now I'll have to date myself. No, I won't date myself, but for almost 30 years. I think because of the fact that I'm in therapies, I'm not necessarily in the scanning aspect of the business, and it's always been in the oncology side, knowing that these novel therapies and what they can do for some patients and their families. So, because when someone is afflicted with cancer, it's just not that person, it's the entire family. So I think that's been the most rewarding, and I've been able to work on 3 successful radiotherapies at this point in my career, so it's been exciting. The one piece of advice I would say, definitely have a strong clinical background, but also realize that scanning and radiotherapies aren't the only things that we can do. And I think that's the good part about nuclear medicine, because you can go off into all different facets. Like I said, I went from clinical research to a CRA, clinical research associate, and then I did some sales and marketing, and then from there I ended up getting back into the clinical side with medical affairs. So I think there's a lot of other opportunities. We're like a spider web. There's so many now, especially with all the new products that are coming out. So it's exciting times.